There is a very interesting phrase, save yourself first, or take care of your needs first before you help others. Yet others will bring up the example of being on an airplane, and maybe if there's turbulence or the plane may be possibly going to crash or whatever, you're advised to pull down your own oxygen mask and put it on before helping the person next to you, even if they're a loved one. Or there's the phrase, family first. Focus on the family. Your family more important than strangers, including those in other countries. Put your country first, patriotism and all. But does this really pan out then? I have a couple questions. For instance, when we praise those who are being married as not selfish, for instance, or we praise them for having children, and again, not selfish with their time, say. And if we praise those in general who focus on the family. Well, a couple of years ago I ran into this phrase, a sham marriage. And legality is about trying to prevent getting married just legally for various advantages on paper. Well, my question then is, how many marriages are in fact sham marriages, not like, say, some would say 1 or 2% or 5%. What if 90% of marriages are sham marriages? In other words, simply strangers passing in the night, or strangers watching television together, often with six-packs on their laps, giggling together or laughing or cursing, going to bed then, no intimacy in bed, or it's mechanical, and then rinse and repeat the next day till you die. Is that really a family then, or a relationship, or a marriage? How many people have I met, scads of people, who virtuously feel pride in having been married 60 years, but I'd say the marriage was dead within a year. That was a sham marriage for a variety of utilitarian purposes, not intimacy as a factor, or personal growth in both parties and the children. Likewise, how many families, including those who pride themselves on having a family, and the whole idea of focus on the family, how many families are sham families? So we have not just then sham marriages, but sham families. How many families, in other words, are very, very dysfunctional, or just again, utilitarian? How many parents, for instance, have children only so that they have a nursing staff in old age, and don't end up in a nursing home by way of somebody, some neighbor or relative, child, or, not child, but somebody saying, oh, you can't take care of yourself, it's time for a nursing home, or whatever you want to call it. So having children, the more the merrier, some say, a nursing staff and a preventative from being farmed out to some nursing program or nursing home, etc., whatever you want to call it. And to children, indentured slaves on the farm, or handy whipping boys and girls to displace anger and blame shift things in general. Is that then a family or a sham family? And when it is said, take care of your needs first before you can help others, well, I think sometimes that's true in regard to having chronic anger, strong chronic fears, or strong chronic guilt. Kind of hard to help others when you're consumed with those things and or blinded to the extent you miss reality if you have those problems greatly. But to claim that you need a big nest egg, for instance, and build that up, before you're able to help others, I think is a completely different matter. For my observation now at age 62 is the wealthiest people on the planet, including in our country in particular, are the most frightened on average of a variety of things. The most angry often too, especially if that income stream isn't growing or could reverse. So I don't think at all that's the answer. I'm just not going to name names. But I think the names are very commonplace and obvious, and the individuals very miserable, or we only see them at their best and they look happy. There are plenty of videos on this about the misery of celebrities and more. Much can be hidden, especially in the short term. The downsides of not getting anywhere really with piling up lots of money. I call it external power sources as opposed to internal power sources, either what you call spiritual in nature, or I like too the materials in Napoleon Hill and Andrew Carnegie's book, How to Own Your Own Mind, as part and parcel of internal power, not the external powers afforded by money per se piled up. That, in my mind, is like a drug addict who just craves more and more and is never satiated, never reaches the goal they were hoping for, more peace of mind in general on a long-term, consistent level. And now, in a sense, for part two of this. For those who are biblically minded, spiritually minded, religiously minded, and I'm not going to state at present where I feel I see myself on this continuum, but in general, there has been in the Christian scriptures verses such as, "To whom much hath been given, much is expected." Noting that about 5-10 years ago I ran into Dr. Albert Schweitzer, read a biography on him. He had a medical degree and 2 PhDs, and then he felt, along with his parents, having given so much to him, he claimed anyway, his father a Lutheran minister, his mother supposedly very loving also, it is claimed, that he felt obligated to give back, and he decided that he was going to find a way by age 30 to give back, and he eventually went to Africa for many decades as a, I guess you could say, medical missionary and more. And likewise, Garrison Keillor of the show Prairie Home Companion was taken to task heavily on the Dorn show. What is the first name of Dorn? I forget. For not having done a whole lot more given what he had at his disposal, seemingly, to give back in the area of false sex charges, his having been charged with a sex charge, and basically, it claimed, putting his tail between his legs and running, instead of standing firm and doing something much more about it with the resources he had at hand. The question then being, did Garrison Keillor do what he could have done with his resources, and also what were the extent of the resources? He had knowledge, yes, but how much control of fear? Which, of course, is the question then we may sometimes have of why some saints were willing to be burned, crucified, assassinated, and more. Call it torture, if you will, including Bonhoeffer in Germany. I think my view personally is that some follow the adage of Albert Einstein. I don't know where he felt or was on the spectrum of to whom much has been given, much is expected, lest they burn in flames, or not get a better seat in heaven, so to speak. One of the two, all too often, driving this supposed altruism, which was thus altruism much toward themselves first. Again, altruistic towards the self, so you didn't burn in flames, or you got a better seat in heaven, and yes, help other people at the same time too. But save your own skin first being the motto. So, if a person doesn't feel compelled to make personal sacrifices and thus experience what some would call unnecessary pains in life, emotionally, or a shortened lifespan, or certain chronic health problems coming on earlier in life rather than later, less money for health insurance, moving to better locations, including better climate, or maybe even leaving the country someday, or more travel, what gives? In other words, why make personal sacrifices, some would say, if there's nothing in it for you, in an afterlife, or just in general? One person having told me way back in my life that I was a masochist for certain things I had, quote, decided, or paths that life had laid out for me, if you want to put it that way. That I was a masochist, bringing on pain unnecessarily because I enjoyed pain, which is a common theme I hear people say when they see someone else suffering, that such and such enjoys pain. So why even want to feel pain, including the pain of realizing one may have a shortened physical lifespan compared to some others who have had different routes in life? Well, I've seen several things laid out in videos and in my own life. No pain, no gain, first of all. Pain also being a great teacher in general.